Okay. Got the green light. Okay, now that's going. Okay, now we go back over here. We wait to see before this flips over. Come on, there we go. Good. Nice. All right, now we're going to pop out the chat into a separate window, and we're going to turn it to live chat instead of top chat. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds like there's an algorithm involved. Ouch. Oof. All right, so there we go. Hope you folks are doing well. Let's see, we've got Go For It Painting here in the chat. Hello, notification on. Notifications are cool, yep. Afternoon from Bognor, UK. I've never even heard of that. That's pretty cool. Going from California, please talk to us about the Fanatic Warpaint range. I mean, I can, for sure. I used that image in the thumbnail mainly because I was like looking for just a picture of a bunch of paints, and I found that picture on their website, on Army Painter's website. That being said, I do have the new Fanatic starter set. They sent it to me. It's none of the Fanatic stuff's out, I think, until about the end of the year, but they've sent me the starter set, which I have not opened yet, but I did just get it. So that's pretty cool too. It comes with a brush, and it comes with a model inside, plus the paints and such. I can talk about that in a little bit if you'd like. Let's see here. Good morning from Mexico City. I'm really curious about how the other companies are working now on an alternative now that Fanatic range is out there. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know that anybody's necessarily going to go run out and change what they've been doing. I think that it's more a situation of the Fanatic paints kind of coming up to the level in the opaque paints of some of the other high-end stuff. I don't know that Games Workshop's going to be making any big changes to their opaque line anytime soon. They should, because they're not great, in my opinion. But, yeah. Good morning from coastal North Carolina, hoping to finish some intercessors and get an impulsor started during the stream today. Nice. Good morning from afternoon from a leafy Surrey, UK. Nice. It's been a chilly weekend here in Edinburgh, Scotland, but my painting desk is next to a radiator, so I can ignore that for now. Nice. It is snowing. It's been snowing since last night. Not like crazy, like there's maybe a ½ inch of snow out on the ground, but none of my weather apps that I like to look at were like, oh yeah, it's going to totally snow on Saturday night. They're like, oh, it's going to maybe snow on Tuesday, but it's been snowing and it's supposed to stop around, I don't know, probably around the time the show ends, roughly before lunch, I think. But yeah, so that's kind of weird. I may actually have to go out and shovel a little tiny bit just to be sure, but yeah. Kent, England, how you doing? Wet and cold West Midlands. Good morning from West Coast, US. Painting today after clearing up a dirty resin printer. Nice. Happy Sunday from Drizzly Indy. How you doing? Good morning from Chile, Washington, D.C. Fungazi, how you doing? Brian, how you doing? Ottawa. Let's see here. And then everything scrolled. Quebec, tanks are prepped for primer after the stream. Nice. We've been seeing people in the comments, or not in the comments, sorry, in the Discord, talking about how there were several people who were like, I took this to Thanksgiving and we played it, you know, or I played it with my nieces and nephews and stuff like that. There was talk of Warlord Princess Bubblegum and how she destroyed her, I believe, her uncle and her brother in a game. So that's a lot of fun too. Let's see here. Happy time of day. How you doing? Winnipeg, Canada. Berlin, Germany. Dallas, Texas. Drizzling, London. Greetings from Berlin as well. There you go. VJ Morph. How you doing? Frosty, Seattle. KCMO. Good morning from cold Oklahoma. Building 2 Shermans this morning. Nice. How you doing? Coventry, England. Jonesboro in Southern Illinois. How you doing? You guys got rain down there. Yeah, we got into a snow up here. Snowy North Dakota. Bristol. Currently painting up Mr. Freeze. Arnie, of course. Love the character, but not a fan of night models. The plastic is an absolute pain to clean up. I've never used any of their models, so I don't know. It's interesting. Boston, Clearwater, Hudson, Wisconsin, dreary Norfolk, Virginia. Yeah, it's also dreary here, but you know, there's snow. So, Isle of Wight. Looking forward to this episode. Just had a resurgence of hobby motivation. Going to base paint a blooded model today. Nice. What I'm kind of looking for, and I might as well get this going early. What I'm kind of looking for is every once in a while I'll do one of these shows and I'll ask for topics. Well, this time I'm looking for topics of a more specific type. I want, and so if you want to put something in the comments and you want to like suggest a topic, put the word topic, preferably in all caps first, and then what the topic is, so that when I go back through the scan of the chat later on, like, you know, afterwards, I can find the topics a little bit easier. I wish I could just download the chat directly into like a Word file or something, not Word, but you know what I mean, like a text file, but I don't think there's a way to do it. Anyway, what I'm looking for is topics about that are relevant to new painters, to new hobbyists. You know, like if you were getting into the hobby right now, what would you want to know vis-a-vis, you know, what tools you need, what's the difference between brushes, you know, synthetic and natural hair, like that type of stuff. So things that are specifically aiming towards new hobbyists, not even necessarily new players, more like the craft side of it in general. So if you've got some ideas for a hobby video idea that is aimed towards new people, I'm thinking for 2024 of doing kind of a series that's sort of, you know, I mean, that's mainly been my focus, obviously, for the entire time I've been doing this channel, just about, is getting new people in the hobby. But I'd like to make something like very, very specific, potentially make a playlist and, you know, that kind of thing. And so people can find that information or something. I don't know, maybe call it something different, you know, like the show itself, not the channel, but, you know, that kind of thing. Kind of like the Why I Like It series, except just about getting into the hobby and stuff. So if you've got some ideas, I'd appreciate seeing them. Or if you just got other questions or just want to say hi or whatever, that's fine too. But that's kind of what I was talking about. And like I said, I can talk about, I didn't expect to, but I can talk about some of the Fanatic stuff as well. It's very good. I like it quite a bit. Castleberry, Florida, Bristol, Central Illinois. First snow of the year is falling now. Yeah, ours started last night, like I said. Hi there from near Cologne. Have a nice Sunday, folks. How you doing? Saskatchewan, nice. South Wales. Checking in from an oddly sunny South Ontario. It's supposed to be raining. Huh. Well, like I said, we weren't supposed to get snow until Tuesday, so I think that there's been some sort of mix-up. Good morning from a freshly snow-covered Junction City, Wisconsin. Glad to be catching the live show. Nice. Afternoon from chilly Puckle Church. Good old Puckle Church. It's a lot of fun to say. Puckle Church in Saskatchewan. Painting dwarves and halflings for Romantic Games of War. Nice. Romantic Games Kings of War. That's what it is. Thank you. Dog Design Studio, my home-based workshop here in the Midwest. Got our first blanket of snow last night, so it's currently cold, quiet, and white outside. Yeah, I just saw a thing recently about why it's so quiet when it snows or when it has snowed, and it's something about basically the actual snow itself is absorbing sound to some degree, like the sound waves, instead of hitting hard surfaces like concrete or whatever and bouncing back, they hit the snow and they sort of dissipate or something along those lines. So Vallejo nukes their extra opaque range and I hate it. I don't know anything about their extra opaque range. That's interesting. Morning from snowy Hudson, Illinois. How you doing, Jay? Citadel opaques are very hit and miss. The pots are the worst, though. That's the biggest issue. Yeah. Like, for a while, I was still kind of using, like, Kislev Flesh for flesh tones because I kind of liked it. But then my pot kind of dried out because that's what they're designed to do, as far as I can tell. They're just kind of hot, wet garbage. And I just don't want to use pots anymore. I'm pretty much all about dropper bottles now. So, yeah. Morning from Lexington, Kentucky, working on some troopers for 5 parsecs. Nice. Getting a listen while finally getting started on my Leagues of Votann Combat Patrol. Cool. West Texas, working on 4 Sherman tanks. Excited about your zine. Well, I appreciate it. It's right here, by the way. Zine. Snarl. If you're interested, you can go to snarlingbadger.com. That is not on sale this weekend, but also we do have, and I don't have a way to link it or do anything cool like that. Well, hang on, wait a minute. I could do this, and I could type here. Snarling snarlingbadger.com. There we go. So, yeah, so anyway, long story short, we're actually doing a Black Friday sale for the first time ever. We've never done a sale before, so we're giving it a try. Snarl is unfortunately not on sale, but it's only $8 anyway. So, but our other titles are, so let's say Rain in Hell. They're all 10% off. So both the PDF or the PDF plus printed book are 10% off. So you can order them straight to the website. It'll take you to Wargame Vault where they're marked down there, and then you can get them. Same with Space Station Zero. Also on sale. Instead of $13 for the PDF, it's $11.70. And instead of $18 for the PDF and printed book, it's $16.20 plus shipping, of course. And then Majestic 13 as well. And it's $12.60 on sale for the PDF, $17.10 for the PDF with the printed book plus shipping. The cards are not on sale because they're printed through a different place, and we're not making very much on the cards right now anyway, so we were like, meh. But the rest of the stuff, those books are on sale. So if you're interested, go to snarlingbadger.com, and you can find the stuff there. And if you're interested in the zine, like I said, that is also available now. It's just a PDF, and it is currently not on sale because it just came out. But it's got Tanks for the Apocalypse in it. It's got Rain in Hell, The Reckoning, which is an add-on for Rain in Hell. And it's got Space Station Zero, New Discoveries, which is an add-on for Space Station Zero. It's basically new equipment here. And in Rain in Hell, it's a whole new philosophy plus 2 new scenarios. And Tanks for the Apocalypse is a 2 to 10 player tank game, which people seem to be enjoying. And we enjoy that they enjoy it. So there you go. I have to click on this screen now. This is going to be really interesting in the future, not too far in the future, but in the future, once I finally have my new computer set up, because I will have 2 computer screens, so I won't be working on one relatively small screen, which will be nice too. Let's see here. Where were we? Whoops, everything moved. Dang it. Seeing some topics there. That's cool. Morning from Seattle. Anybody try the Pro Acryl fluorescent paints? I haven't. I don't have any. I don't really use the only type of like fluorescent paint I ever use is like a bright green for something Necron that I want to be glowy. And I have some airbrush paints from Army Painter that are in fluorescent, but otherwise, yeah. Whenever I think of fluorescent, I just think of like the 80s, and I guess if I was painting something from the 80s, that'd be a different story. Let's see here. Snowy Bavaria. Finishing up my last 30 guardsmen and thus finishing my pile of shame. Nice. Outback Australia and enjoying summer. Nice. How you doing? Chile Syracuse, New York. I'm hosting a 1,200 point bolt action game in about an hour. Nice. GDB making changes no one asked for. Washes. Yes, I agree. And ignoring the changes we do. Crappy pot. Yep. Apparently works as a business model. Yeah, well, we'll see. Morning from Seattle. Howdy. Central West Alberta, where we get a dusting of snow last night. Nice. Oregon. Snowy Milwaukee. I expected the snow made way home yesterday. Stopped at one of your local stores. Nice. Morning from Canada. Finishing up Drukhari's. Finally found Gnarlwood box at LGS. Building it giddily. Nice. Primer weather has stopped until late March or so over here. Yeah, primer weather is difficult here. Really wonder if the Army Painter Warpaint fanatics will change the opinion by many that Army Painters and inferior bandit paints, speed paints did a lot of the work. Maybe this is finally enough. I think that people using it will definitely, just people trying it at conventions and stuff like that. Like so far they've been, and they've got videos on their YouTube channel about this, but they've been showing it off at conventions kind of behind the scenes here and there to people for a good long time, for sometimes since mid last year maybe. And people have just been like, wow, you know, this is crazy. They were showing it off at, I think they were showing it off at the, where were they just recently? Someone in my chat on Twitch just recently was saying that they were at a convention and they got to try it out at the convention. It wasn't I don't think it was the World Championship thing, because that was an all GW jam, and they wouldn't have probably had booths there for any other companies. But it was at something, I forget where, and they said they tried it out, and they're like, oh yeah, when you said it creamy in the videos, you're exactly right. That's exactly the right word, and it is. I mean, I know Sam's been using it, and Sam's a very high-end painter and doesn't mess around, and he's been pretty happy with the stuff. He's been kind of, like, yep, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I know he's had trouble with other brands of paint here and there where he doesn't like how they sit on wet palettes, but he really likes this stuff. So, and the way that it sits on the wet palette. So, yeah, I think that you're not wrong. I think that people are gonna, between the airbrush paints, like when those came out, I was like really surprised how good they were. And then when the speed paints came out, I was really surprised how good those were. And then now with this stuff, I mean, they're kind of just going from strength to strength, which is really cool to see. And they're making the stuff look better. Like I've got the old starter box that, and they're still kind of using the same corporate colors, which you can like them or not like them. It depends on what your interest is. But like, I don't know, just like, it's like they're working harder on the graphics now. Like the graphics look more modern, and like the bottles look a lot more modern now than the old, and they're just, I don't know. I'm glad that they're doing that. Just me as a visual graphics nerd, I'm glad to see that the stuff looks better. So that's a benefit too. Curious if you heard about Renegade Games bringing back Heroscape. They announced last week that it'll be pre-painted and orders open March 1st. Yes, I do know that. So, I'm still doing some freelance work for the company that I used to work for back as my normal day job. And I still do freelance for them pretty frequently. One of the projects I'm working on with them on is we do work with Renegade. So I'm doing some website stuff for them, and whatnot. Some design and some like wireframes and things like that. And so yeah, I've been hearing about the Heroscape stuff for a while. For those of you that don't know, Heroscape was, I forget who made it originally. Was it Hasbro or was it somebody else? I don't know. But it was basically like, it was pre-painted. It was kind of like a miniatures war game, but it was played on a hex grid, except that the hex grid was three-dimensional. You bought these three-dimensional hexes, which were maybe about an inch tall, maybe a little bit shorter, and they would lock together. They had these kind of like things that were like, I don't know, it was very easy to lock them together and then stack them, and they came in all kinds of different colors, and so you could be like, oh, over here's the low fields, and over here's the mountains, and you could, and stuff like that. And it was like, it was definitely aimed towards beginner kind of war gamers and people, interested in kind of transitioning from board games to war games. And it was quite popular up until it wasn't. And it's also, I think, pretty expensive to produce. I mean, and pretty expensive to buy. Like every once in a while you'd see pictures of people online who would have like a giant table of all these hexes, because you needed the hexes to play, because that's how you moved around, and you also stacked them and all that kind of stuff. So buying each piece of your terrain and your board piece by piece, I mean, you didn't buy them, one at a time. You bought them in sets, but still, it's interesting they're bringing it back. But it'll be interesting to see how it works. You know what I mean? I glued a backpack on crooked, and I'm trying to unglue it. I used super glue, and I've tried the freezer trick, and no luck so far. You can also get this stuff that's just called CA glue debonder. And it's made by bunches, you can just look around and probably find it. Just lots of different manufacturers that make it. But CA glue debonder, it's something you put on there, let it sit for a little bit, to try to get it into the, be in between your backpack and your person or whatever. And then it'll loosen up the glue sometimes. But sometimes even just trying to like just wiggle it, especially if you did the freezer trick, that may have just loosened. If you just start to kind of move it back and forth and wiggle it and kind of work that, eventually it'll kind of pop. That's why I like to use CA glue, is if I do something bad, then I can fix it. Whereas if you use plastic cement, you kind of can't. Not very easily at all. Leading from the Philippines, painting some Old Dominion cataphractoi for Conquest. Gotcha. I know about Old Dominion. I don't know the user or the name there. Been a while since I listened in. Well, we're glad to have you. Freezing Finland, how you doing? Good morning from North Carolina. Hamilton, Ontario, working my way through the Eisenhorn Omnibus. Nice. Excuse me. Gosh darn mornings. Working in the morning from Hamilton, Ontario, working my, I just read that. Easton, Maryland, I think. I feel like a 7-year-old waiting for Christmas as I wait for Legions Imperialis to hit the stores. For a hot second, I was kind of interested. Like, they didn't send me anything like that because it's not really what they don't send me stuff like that. They generally send me more skirmish stuff. That being said, I was kind of interested. I watched a couple of battle reports, and I like that they're doing alternating activation, although they're doing like phased alternating action. So you have like, okay, well, it's the movement phase. So you move a unit, and then I move a unit, and you move a unit, and I move a unit. Now it's the combat phase, and then you fight with a unit, and then so it's kind of alternating action, but it's still in phases. Whereas in normal games where you're using alternating activation, excuse me. In normal games where you're using alternating activation, you generally like, I'm going to activate this unit, which means move, fight, whatever types of actions it can do, and now it's done. They're, in this game, still doing alternating activation, but it's alternating activation during the movement phase, so everybody moves, but nothing else happens, and you go back and forth, unit after unit after unit, back and forth, and then you get to the combat phase, and then you're doing that again, which is an interesting concept. I guess I've never played a game quite like that before, and I think that's interesting. Well, maybe original Kill Team was kind of like that. 2018 Kill Team. And then also they took out the wound rule, which is so nice. Like you hit and then the person saves. Not this, I hit, oh, and then I wounded. Or I hit, oh, I didn't wound. I just, So there was parts of it that I was like, that's interesting. I'm vaguely interested. I think it'd be interesting to try painting that small. In that I wouldn't have to try to force it. You wouldn't have to go in there and go, oh, I've got to put in little, do the eye lenses on the Space Marines. They're this big. No. But then when it came out, or when it was on pre-order, it sold out like in a minute or something crazy like that. Like that $200 box was just gone. So maybe your local store will have it. I hope for you that it does. But it's another one of these products where they didn't make anywhere near enough. And so I'm a lot less interested. Also, I have a feeling that if you want to build like a decent sized army, you're looking at spending a lot of money. Like that $200 starter box is like a pretty good deal. But then after that, everything else is surprisingly kind of expensive, maybe. So I don't know. This is me thinking about, myself and what was why I'm interested in doing it. I think Sam got it. They sent it to Sam, and so he was messing with it. And so I was like, "Oh, maybe we could play. I could get the stuff." But then I don't think it's going to happen. Let's see here. Where to get cheap mini to paint? If you have a local store that carries either Reaper Bones or WizKids, like kind of D&D miniatures and things like that. The D&D miniatures are nice because they're already kind of pre-primed gray. The Reaper Bones, you need to prime them in some fashion, but if they're white colored plastic, don't use a spray can. Use some sort of brush-on primer or something like that. If they're gray or black, almost black, then you can usually use a rattle can on them. But if they're white bones, don't do that. Don't use a spray can to prime them. But those are probably two really good places. And then if you can, maybe check eBay. You find somebody who's like trying to sell a bunch of old Space Marines or something like that, and just trying to get rid of them. And then you can buy them like in a big bunch and then have a bunch of things to mess with and paint and practice on. The last option I would tell you would probably be to, if you're into board gaming, or if you've got a friend who's into board gaming, a lot of board games come with miniatures these days. And if you just want to practice, you can be like, hey, friend of mine, I will paint your Zombicide miniatures for you, or your whatever, you know what I mean? And then that way you've got more models to practice on as well without having to buy anything. And then your friend is happy because now they have painted models too. So that's something to think about. Rehydrating older paint. I pre-ordered a full Fanatic paint set, was just too interested about it. Merry Christmas. Nice. Yeah. The like the big complete set, I don't think that's going to be something that they're going to have available always. I think that's kind of a launch thing. that they're going to do. But then after that, the starter will be available always, obviously. The mega set will be always available. The most wanted set will be always available. And the mega set and the most wanted set, there's no duplications. So if you buy one, then you buy the other one later, you're not getting duplications. There would be duplications if you bought the starter set first and then bought one of those other ones, but it's not a ton of them. I mean, there's only like 11 paints in here, I think. So, okay. So in here, you're going to get matte black, you're going to get matte white, you're going to get leather brown, you get an ultramarine blue, green skin, demonic yellow, pure red. There's a silver, a gold. What's the silver called? It's very hard to read. Plate mail, metal, greedy gold, and then there's a gray brush on primer, and then there's also strong tone, which is basically a black wash. No, brown wash. Dark tone is the black wash. Strong tone is brown wash. And you also get, like I said, a paintbrush and a miniature. At least I think there's a paintbrush in here. Yes, there's a paintbrush and a miniature inside this. And I think this is going to cost, when it comes out, $42.50, $44, $45, something like that. But it will give you, black, white, brown, and then blue, green, yellow, red. And if you want to make orange, yellow and red make orange. You want to make purple, red and blue make purple. If you want to make, that kind of thing. So you've got a lot of stuff that you can mix together and kind of go from there. But these will all be the new Fanatic paints. They'll have the mixing balls in there. There's a bunch of little tiny little QR codes you can scan to find out how to get painting and how to do this and blah, blah, and all that kind of stuff, which is also cool because it's a starter thing. It makes sense. Everything comes with agitator balls in it too, so it's easier to shake and whatever. And like I said, the actual paint consistency has been it's just this really nice creamy stuff that's got so much more pigment than it used to. But yet it's not chunky or dry or anything like that. It's a really, I'm super impressed by it, honestly. Brush care before, during, and after painting. That's a good topic. Yeah, I can see that. Good morning from the Pocket Dimension. How you doing, JP Got Rockets? Had a great Thanksgiving stream last week. Hopefully it motivated some apocalyptic mischief and mayhem. Nice. Picking the right brushes for you? Sure. Do new hobbyists need GW paints and brushes, or is there a better option? Sure. Do how-to videos do poorly? Short answer is yes. I mean, early on. Excuse me. Early on, yes, they kind of do. There's a concept in YouTube that's known as velocity. So when your video first airs, the algorithm is looking at it, and people think that the algorithm is this is how, the algorithm is what makes it so that this happens or that happens or whatever. What the algorithm does is it looks at the viewer or the viewers and figures out how to get it so more viewers will see this video, if they should. Or would it be better for the viewer to see this other video? You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of the thing. So what happens is that early on, it starts showing the thumbnail for your video to people who've watched your videos before. And if they click on it, then it goes, okay. And then they watch it and they're like, okay. And then it kind of starts to, in the algorithm, give it a higher score, which means it starts to show it to more people. This is a video that is likable by people who've watched their videos before, so maybe more people want to see it. But if people who've watched your videos a bunch before don't watch the video, then it's okay, this video is maybe not as interesting to people, so we're not going to show it to as many people because we got to show other videos to people so that they watch those. YouTube just cares about getting people to stay watching on YouTube. So, but that's early velocity. Now, later on, as the video's been up for X amount of months, years, whatever, then the algorithm is really more about just showing you when you ask for something. When you go to YouTube and you type in, hey, I want to know how to paint a power sword, then it's okay, here's a bunch of power sword videos. And there will be some algorithmic kind of ranking in there too, to some degree, but it's not the same way it is early on. That early kind of velocity is also very much about the suggested tab or whatever, when you're just going to youtube.com and it's here's a bunch of stuff you should look at. Why not? As opposed to going to say your subscribed tab where it shows you these are the most recent things from people you subscribe to. Those things generally are just showing you the stuff as is, and it's not algorithmic, but that suggested tab is very algorithmic. So all that to say, if you're not right now wondering how do I paint a power sword, you have a tendency in general not to watch a video about how to paint power swords. Most people. But when you are painting a power sword and you start searching for it, then that's when you find that video. So how-to videos don't usually do great right away, but they do have a tendency over the long term to do pretty well. They have legs, as it's very frequently known as. So, I don't want to stop doing videos like that. I don't like the concept of that. And I'm not here to try to just get views. I'm here to try to teach people about stuff so that they can enjoy a hobby that I think is a lot of fun. That's really the main thing. So yeah, if I was just here to just get views, then I would be doing very different videos. Probably also wouldn't be doing wargaming videos, even though, like, if I really just wanted to get views, there's a lot of terrible kind of video tropes and memes out there that I could probably be doing to do more of that. And but I'm trying to actually like teach people here and stuff like that. So that's why I still do it. I mean, look at Vince. I mean, Vince does almost completely how-to videos. And then there's obviously his Warhammer Wednesday thing, which is a different thing altogether, more of a live stream like this. But yeah, it's interesting. Let's see here. Ways of attaching mini to the base, plastic cement versus super glue, attaching to unpainted base versus painted base, attaching before painting the base to after finishing the base. That's a good idea. Best cheap paint packs, both colors and washes. Interesting. Pouring medium, heavy medium. Which one and which one is, what is gesso? Oh, medium. I see what you're saying. Just, yeah, gotcha. Oh, poor Diesel. He's got a cold. I just heard him sneeze in the other room. Just a little cat sneeze. Paint brand and type selection. Interesting. High quality non-GW models for beginners. Yeah. How do I know what is the right painting standard is to go for? It's a good question. Yeah. Show the hobby is bigger than one or two companies, series of indie games and miniature comparable to the big guys. I mean, I try to do that now, I mean, obviously I still end up talking about GW stuff from time to time. But I do try to, get the indie word out there, a decent amount, like pretty much all the, well, other than the Space Hulk one, pretty much all of the Why I Like It series has all been indie stuff. I would say that within Games Workshop, Space Hulk is very indie in that you can't find it anywhere. Good morning from sunny OC, California. Thoughts on AMG games like Star Wars Shatterpoint and Legion? I painted a Legion army, stormtroopers and whatnot, General Veers, Director Krennic, etc., Death Troopers. 800 points, painted them. The game dried up in my area, so nobody was playing it at this shop anymore. I'm not interested in Shatterpoint. I played a demo of it at Adepticon earlier this year in March. Yeah, March. And it just didn't do it for me. I don't know. There's something about the sculpts too. Again, I don't like the 40 millimeter size. I don't like that. And I also just the sculpts, I don't know. There's something about them that don't do it for me. So yeah. I know that they're going to be making some, eventually they're going to be making stuff from movies 4, 5, and 6. So your Luke Skywalkers, your Han Solos, your, Chewbacca's. I think that's his name. Anyway, yeah, that might be slightly more interesting to me. But again, the scale I don't like. It bothers me that they make 2 games of the same game that are completely different scales, and it doesn't make sense to me. Like, why don't you just make a skirmish version of Legion? Because then people have to buy all new models and all new terrain. I get it from a capitalism point of view, but I don't want to play that game, I guess. So yeah, that's kind of my problem, honestly, with AMG right now. Honestly, it seems like they're putting all of their eggs into the Marvel basket, which makes sense because that's the game that they actually designed, and then Shatterpoint is the new one, and the stuff that got dumped on them by Asmodee which is Legion, Star Wars X-Wing, Armada, etc. They don't seem to be pushing as hard, maybe. I don't know. But it is what it is, I guess. G'day from Australia, Nuremberg. Back to basics is always suitable for new hobbyists, but I mean basics, sure. Prepping models, that's a good idea, sure. Greetings from Nova. How you doing? Thinning paints for different effects, sure. I get to see that, yeah. These are good. These are good options. Things to save money on an expensive startup to the hobby, like clippers. I did a video about that recently, about going like to the dollar store and like buying stuff like that and whatever. Like how to get into I think it was like how to get into wargaming like for under $100 or something like that. Or maybe it was, yeah, I did something like that earlier, but yeah, it's not a bad idea. What tools new hobbyists need and don't need. That's a good idea, yeah. Building some of the new Age of Sigmar Warcry ghouls, but on square bases. Oh yeah, see, I've never been a square base fan. It's just never been my thing. I mean, I was very interested back in the day when I was playing like 5th edition, 6th edition, 7th edition, 40K. I was always like, this stuff for fantasy seems cool, but I don't like rank and flank and I don't like square bases. And then when Age of Sigmar came along, I was like, oh, okay, well, there you go, problem solved. And I know they're bringing back the old world, kind of. We'll see how many of those they get out. I mean, if Epic, well, whatever, Legion Imperialis or whatever they call it, if that they couldn't make enough of to be able to get, like, make it so that pre-orders lasted more than 60 seconds on their website last Saturday or whatever, 2 Saturdays ago, whenever it was, I'll be very surprised how many copies they actually get out there of Old World, but we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd love to be wrong. Learn to paint with cheap minis. Learn how to base wash and highlight. Sure. Proper use of cyanoacrylate to glue anything other than my fingers. Including accelerants. Yeah, no, I didn't glue my fingers together yesterday. I was doing some scratch building on some terrain for a project I'm working on, but I didn't glue my fingers together, but I did definitely get a bunch of glue on my fingers. Set a budget and get your biggest for bang value, sure. Painting 5th edition Bretonians, sending hugs. Well, I appreciate that, thank you. I generally finish the bases after finishing the model, occasionally before, depending on the size of the level of detail, but I always paint the base after the model on it. See, I always paint the base last, but I always put the texture on before I prime. Yeah, so when I'm building the model, I build it, and then I texture the base, and then I prime the whole thing, and then I paint the whole model, and then I paint the base, and then I do the rim at the last. So yeah, that's kind of always been the way that I've done it. The reason I think is because then that way you've got extra, like if you just have a bare plastic base while you're painting and then you get done and then now you have to start putting texture on, I've found that I end up getting texture on parts of the model I didn't mean to. But when it's unpainted, somehow I don't. I don't know exactly how that works. I think it's just maybe Murphy's Law. Having fun here painting some Miami Vice Nurgle, and the kid is painting his first Auric that I prepared for him. Well, that's fun. Vallejo had game color extra opaque in their range, but recently stopped them due to their paint range overhaul. I guess I never knew about that. I think there's a Hobby Town USA here in town that carries Vallejo. Model color and game color, but not the airbrush paints. Otherwise, there's like no place else around here that I know of that I can really get the stuff. The shop that I go to doesn't carry it. Maybe the other shop across town that does, but I don't usually go in there. Be realistic and rational about your introduction to the hobby. If you've never hobbied before, do some research and buy a starter set at most. Pros and cons, different types of sets. Sure, yeah. I mean, I kind of talked a little bit in the video this week to some degree about, about the gap and all that, getting over the gap and telling you to paint, I mentioned in that video, don't go and buy like a super crazy expensive model as your first ever model, because it's not a good idea. I was astounded by the number of people, and it wasn't that many, it was maybe 3, but there's at least 2 or 3 people who push back in the comments and they're like, no, you should buy a really expensive model for your first model, because then you are motivated to paint it. And I was like, I think that's James Workshop on his different account coming in to put that into the comments. I could be wrong. Yeah, I disagree. I really do. I think that what happens is that if you're like, I'm really interested in this hobby, I really want to play Age of Sigmar, I'm going to get Glotkin as my very first ever model. I've never put brush to paint before, or, brush to model before, and I'm going to do Glotkin. Like, I've been doing this a long time, and I'm still not particularly, I don't think, ready to paint Glotkin. Like, the really big, expensive models like that are a huge, huge undertaking. And if it's your first model ever, it's not a good idea. Like, definitely, you want to just start learning brush control. Very first thing is you just need to know how to use your brush. Like, it sounds stupid, but it's actually really important. So, yeah, that's why I tell people to go and, like, Plastic Army Men is a possibility, but meh. I mean, that's if you wanted to go as cheap as possible. If you're like, well, I don't need to paint that many things. I mean, honestly, cheap as possible is painting somebody else's board game minis, if they'll let you. You know what I mean? But even then, I don't know that I would ever want to do my very first painting ever on somebody else's board game minis. Like, to practice once I get a little bit under my belt, sure. But I would probably either, again, like I said, go onto eBay and just try to find like a cheap lot of some sort of garbage that someone's trying to get rid of. Or I would go to my local shop and buy either some Reaper Bones, which are quite inexpensive, or some of those WizKids models, and then practice on those. And then maybe start doing the board game thing. Good morning from Brazil. How you doing? I never tire of seeing how somebody gets a project done, start to finish, from collecting to a completed army warband or table full of terrain themed, coming back to finish a half-started, or refurbished or just forgotten about project. That's been my jam for the last 5 years, mainly to get my own projects done. I'm inspired by others. Nice. I think there must be a lot of people out there who love to watch other people do big projects, because I see a lot of videos with big views from, like, oh, I built this giant terrain thing, or I built this giant, diorama, or I built this giant, and that's just kind of, I think that's just kind of the spectacle to some degree that people get within the hobby, where the videos themselves are not like, this is how you do it. It's just more of like, hey, watch as I do it. You know what I mean? There's a line of videos out there too that are not really about wargaming at all. They're more about dioramas and like scale modeling. And it is just showing a person going from initial idea. There's no talking. I think that maybe some of these videos are Russian, maybe, or Eastern European or something like that. So maybe, it's just, so but again, there's no talking, there's no English. You're just watching someone go from start to finish on a diorama. And these things will have millions of views because they're also interesting to people who aren't in wargaming necessarily. So there's that benefit too. I've never done like the really big giant project type videos like that, partially because I'm putting up a video a week, but also, I don't know, I think I'd rather teach people, personally, I'd rather teach people how to do the parts so they can do their own big thing. But I am thinking a little bit more about doing maybe some videos that take a little bit longer sometimes, to do that, just to see how it works, so yeah. But I think that what happens is that people are looking at it more just from entertainment. Like, oh, I want to see this guy take this $2,000 Forge World model and do whatever you do with it or whatever. I don't know. And it's a whole thing. But they're not looking at it, oh, I'm going to learn how to do this. They're just like, I'm just going to sit here and eat my sandwich and watch you, spend a bunch of money. How to be a veteran in the hobby and not be a gatekeeper. I think that's a good idea. I was going to read the rest of it, but then YouTube was like, nope. Come on. Come on. Man, I'm way behind. There we go. Okay. Wow. Not be a gatekeeper to the new generation. Yes, no, I agree. That's not a bad idea. How to set up a hobby space, keep it tidy, how to organize your minis. Boy, that'd be, you can hear my wife laughing in the background. That's yeah, I'd have to watch somebody else's video about that. What kind of storage should we use for minis, both at home and abroad? Gotcha. What models to buy for painting practice? Gotcha. Hello from a snow-covered Kansas City. Yeah, we got snow here too. It's still going. All the different additives, mediums, thinners. What's the difference between a Vallejo thinner and a Vallejo glaze medium, and when to use what? That is a good question. I would have to learn some of that myself. I will admit I don't use a lot of additives. I will use a medium, glaze medium, something like that, quite frequently. But, and I know what like drying retarders do. I don't know what the big, huge difference is between a drying retarder and a flow improver. I do use airbrush thinner sometimes, but honestly, these days, because I use the Army Painter airbrush paints, I don't thin anything because I just use them straight out of the bottle because they're perfect in my mind. Getting out of your comfort zone socially, how to approach going to new stores and not playing. Not sure if this is a bit too far outside the scope of the channel. I mean, it's not specifically hobby related, but it is definitely within the scope of the channel. I've talked about becoming a gaming advocate. I've talked about like stuff like that to some degree. I think the hard part is in many situations, the reason it's difficult or it's outside of your comfort zone is because it's, I mean, social anxiety, different people have different amounts of it, you know? Like I don't have any kind of fear at all of public speaking, but I know that like going and talking sometimes to new people that I've not met can be kind of uncomfortable. But if I was standing on a stage in front of 2,000 people, that wouldn't be a problem. I don't know why that is, but it is the case. How to thin paints, how to tell what the correct consistency is, how to pick paint schemes for a set of minis. I mean, I've done a little bit talk about paint schemes for minis, but that's, I mean, yeah, touching on that specifically would be not a bad idea for beginners. I think so. What's the coverage of the new Fanatic white paint like? I don't know that it's a ton different than their old white paint. It's definitely, I think, got the stabilizer in there to some degree, so it seems like it's kind of creamier than their old white paint. But I don't know that the white paint, I don't know is 100% just like put it over and it's you know, like painted over black and it's one coat done. It feels like to me the white paint is a little bit more of a, it's a little bit thinner than a lot of other paints in the lines and in the line, sorry. And I think that is because very frequently people are using white to thin, or not thin, sorry, to tint other colors. So I have, let's say, green skin here, and I want to make a lighter green. Well, you're going to add some white to it. And if the white, I think, is really thick, then, you know, then it's not going to necessarily, it could be problematic. Whereas if the white's a little bit more, I don't want to say delicate, that's not the right term. I don't know, not like crazy super coverage and like super robust, I think that helps because they're using the white and the black in that situation more as, it's very rare outside of painting stormtroopers, it's very rare that you ever paint anything actually white, you know what I mean? Or at least that's the case for me. Maybe it's different for you, but for me everything is also like, I use white usually only as, I don't even use it as a full-blown highlight these days. I'll generally use like ivory, unless I want like a really super cool color, then I'll use something like almost like an ice white, or like, which gives it a little bit of a cool color. But straight white is generally for me used as something that I add to make something either generally lighter a little bit. So yeah, it's not like a lot of the other colors. I've messed with a bunch of them and just painted them directly over like a black primed miniature, and I'm amazed at how good they cover. The white is a little bit more kind of like the older white that they've made in the past. What I would personally love for them to see, or for them to make, would be a white that is not designed to be a tint. Yes, it's tint when you add white to a color. It's shade when you darken it down. Within going to college for art, those are the actual technical terms. You know, a lighter color than the base color is a tint, and by adding white to it, and a darker color than that color by adding black to it is a shade. Anyway, my point is I think it'd be really interesting for them to make a like super high coverage white to see like but you know, the matte white, I don't think they messed with too much. Building your workstation with limited room and money, sure. Started buying Vallejo game colors, and I absolutely hate them. Oh, that's a bummer. They are just fluid and cover bad and feel off all the time, which is a shame because I love the Vallejo model paints. Yeah, so that, yeah, it's weird that there's the game colors and there's the model colors. And the model colors are designed for more scale modeling, military stuff. They've got so many different shades of olive drab, you know what I mean? And all that kind of stuff. And then with the game color line is designed so that you could paint, you know, I don't know, elfin princesses and, you know, D&D people and this and that and the other things. So there's a lot of like brighter colors for monsters and dragons and things like that. And so I was generally always a fan early on of the game color line because there was a lot of brightness to it and stuff like that. And furthermore, I forget where I used to get that stuff. There used to be a store that carried it a lot more. And now, like I said, there's only one store in town that I know of that really carries the Vallejo stuff. I think I might have ordered a set one time on eBay. I don't know. Anyway, long story short is I'm a little surprised actually that the two lines aren't using the same. Like it's just like it would be weird to me to think that they would change the medium and the binders and all the stuff that makes the paint and not just change the pigments. Like why not, you know, if you make this model color line and then you make this game color line, the base stuff that makes the paint other than the pigment, you would think would be the same in both. And then it would just be different pigments for, again, your military tanks, your airplanes, that kind of stuff. And this other color would be dragon colors and dwarf colors and, you know, that kind of jazz. So it's strange that they act differently. I don't understand why they would do that. Am I the only weirdo pumped for Legions Imperialis? Well, no, because they, like I said, they sold out, and that box set sold out in like, I've heard like 60 seconds. How are the Tabletop Minions Awards coming along for this year? I've started a list and it's hard this year. I got to be honest with you. Plastic glue or super glue, when to use either. Partially that's a personal preference, but yeah, no, it's not a bad thing to talk about for sure. I saw Pro Acryl fluorescent paints in my local gaming store. I didn't realize they were out yet. Oh, I'll be darned. Huh. I thought they just got, like, they were just, like, going on order for Black Friday. I didn't realize they were out, like, in stores. That's pretty cool. Felix feeling the complete opposite about Vallejo paints. See, I wonder if it's just, like, inconsistent batches? I don't know. It's a good question. What do you think of the color of everything outside? It's not so great. It started snowing last night, like I said, and I was like, oh, I didn't think it was going to do that. My weather app never said anything, and then, you know, it's still doing it now, but it's not like, it's not snow blowing weather yet, so that's good. Just getting into airbrushing. Any recommendations for a starter set of paints? I'm currently considering Army Painter War Paints Air Starter Set or the Vallejo Model Air Basic Color Set. So the Vallejo Model color line will, like, again, like I said, be probably designed for like scale modeling. So if you like to paint like bolt action, like a lot of tanks and stuff like that, a lot of olive drabs, a lot of army style colors, that's probably what the model air line is going to have in it. Their game air color from Vallejo is designed to be brighter colors that are, you know, used in more stuff. Like I said, dragons and dwarves and elfin princesses and, you know, space marines and whatever, you know, that kind of stuff. That being said, I would tell you to get the Army Painter ones just because I think that, like, I switched away. I used to use Vallejo colors for airbrush colors, and I don't anymore. I just use the Army Painter ones. The Army Painter ones are really good. That's my big, I'm a big fan of that. How many grays are there in the new line? Well, as a matter of fact, we can go look if we want to, I think. Where's my tab? Here. And that one. Okay, so if we go to Army Painter. Boof. All right, so if you go to the, there we go. Well, that's so weird. There was a little thing up here at the top. Oh, for God's sakes, didn't I? There was a little thing up here at the top that said Fanatic, like, just recently. Go to home. There we go. That's what I wanted. I was not in the I didn't want to be in the shop. I wanted to be on a website. Fanatic Air Paint. Or, sorry, Fanatic's War Paints Fanatic. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. So, This is the line of colors. This is the new line of colors here. You folks, I think, should be able to see that. So as far as grays are concerned, there are 2 separate 6-color families for grays. There's one that seems to be slightly cooler gray, which has got matte black, deep gray, uniform gray, which is what I just used on my Imperial Guard, ash gray, company gray, and brigade gray, which is hard to say. That's one line, and that's a cool gray color. And then the other line is this line of 6 as well, which goes from Grey Castle, Gargoyle Gray, Great Hall Gray, Worn Stone, Brain Matter Beige, and Matte White. So those are the 2 different grays in there. And then there's a bunch of, so everything you'll notice in this chart, everything is like in 6s, right? So you got, there's 6 here grays, there's 6 warm grays, there's 6 kind of desaturated blues, there's 6 blues that are regular, there's 6 blues that are getting into like deeper blue, blah, blah, blah. And then you start heading into greens. So each of these like group of 6 is a different family is what they're talking about. I don't know if you guys can see it. Probably not, because I'm a very small person right now in this upper part of the screen. But on the back here, they show this, like every bottle is going to have, from what I understand, these little gauges on them that show, hey, this is from this group of 6 colors, and this is the 3rd one in, or the 2nd one in, or this is the 5th one, or the 6th one in, or whatever. So you can always tell. Now, what I'd like to know, to be perfectly honest, is whether or not, I think it'd be smart if they could, but I think it'd be smart to just sell these in little 6-packs. So you just be like, oh, I want to buy the desaturated blues, and then you're good. But I don't know if they'll be doing that or not. But yeah, so this is the total, like 216 paints. So if you just go to thearmypainter.com and then click on War Paints Fanatic up at the top. Don't go to the store because you can't buy them yet, and that's why I wasn't showing up in the store, and I was on the Google tricked me, as it is usually doing these days. But yeah, so there's all these different groups of 6s. Here's one of the groups of reds. Here's another group of reds. Then there's getting into some pinks and some purples and some skin tones. And then down here we start getting into, because they have 162 colors of normal acrylics, which is they sent me those 162 colors, the kind of pre-production-y ones that I've been using and Sam's been using and a lot of people have been using. Then there's 18 metallics. I don't have any that are new metallics. And then there's 18 washes, which I don't have any that are new washes. And then there's 18 effects, which I also don't have. So the effects in this situation are, let's see, Disgusting Slime, Dry Blood, True Blood, Dark Rust, Fresh Rust, Verdigris, Oil Stains, Oozing Vomit. That's fun. And then there's a War Paint Stabilizer, which honestly, I don't even know what that will do. Like, I know that they're talking about the stabilizer that they're putting in this paint. I don't know how that makes it different from, I guess that's probably just the medium. That's the new medium, I'm assuming. They're calling it stabilizer. And then there's the War Paints Retarder, which is to make it easier for blending. It takes it longer to dry when you add that stuff generally. Then there's a gloss varnish, a matte varnish. There's brush on gray primer. And then there's some, looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 5 like fluorescent colors. Plasma Coiled Glow, Data System Glow, Lens Flare Glow, Radiation Glow, and Power Node Glow. So, and then there's all these new metallics here, and then down the bottom it's all new washes. So you've got dark tone, strong tone, soft tone. They've had those forever. Light tone had that too. Sepia tone, that one's kind of new, sort of. Usually soft tone or light tone was kind of sepia, but this is even looks like a bit warmer. And then there's rust tone, which I'm looking forward to checking out. Dark red tone, orange tone, green tone, military shade, blue tone, dark blue tone, purple tone, magenta tone, which I think is interesting. Strong skin shade, dark skin shade, and then wash medium. So, and then plus all these other colors, which is really cool. So, oh, and there's a poster you can download. Neat. So that's fun. But yeah, I think it's very interesting they're putting them in these groups of 6 like this. And like, I really loved with the airbrush paints, the way that they were doing the triads, and these are just basically bigger triads. So that's very cool too. I'm very interested in checking that out when they're going to send it to me. Where is the chat window? There it is. Doop and doop. There we go. Let's see here. Tools you don't need and some tools that are really useful. Yeah, no, that's a good idea for sure. Waiting for my birthday to get something to work on. Nice. Do you like Kill Team if you just use the bespoke non-compendium teams? I don't. Or wait, no, you're saying the bespoke. Well, yeah, no, I haven't tried it. That's a good point. I believe Army Painter got a bad reputation because of the ketchup water explanation not being on individual bottles. Honestly, I think you're right. Yeah, no, I definitely like. So for people who don't know what we're talking about here, the original regular war paints, the regular opaque acrylics, for 15 years have always had an extra amount of medium, the medium fluid in the bottle to help protect the color. But the problem was is if you didn't squirt that stuff out on the first time that you use it, the extra medium, then people would be like, these paints are really, really runny. They're really runny and kind of blue. But that's because it had extra fluid in there. And they would tell people, hey, the first time you use the bottle, you got to squirt out this extra stuff till you get bubbles and then close it back up again, shake it real good. And now you've got, better paint. But it wasn't on the bottle saying to do that. It was in like one of their pamphlets. They would tell people and stuff like that, but it wasn't. And the new paints, the new war paints, because of the extra stabilizer that's built in, and it's different than having the medium from what I understand. And again, I'm not a paint chemist, I'm not a paint scientist. You don't have to do that anymore. And it doesn't separate as easily either. I've not come across any of the new Fanatic bottles where like you get that separation where there's a whole bunch of fluid in there and like that. That's not the way it's doing it. It's different. And I've been here for it. Sorry, I threw my back out, not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before, and it's getting better, but some chairs are not as comfortable as others. Hi from Grey Blackpool, UK, stripping some old metal Skaven. Nice. For the last 3 years, I painted a friend old metal Skaven models for Christmas. So far, he's got 3 Globadiers, a Grey Seer, and 2 Assassins. Well, that's very nice. It's very nice of you to do. I actually won our Gaslands and Burgers match on Friday by being the only player with a vehicle left. Much carnage and mirth. Nice. That sounds like a lot of fun. Just saw Vince's video on the metallic speed paints. The set is now in my shopping cart. We'll pull the trigger soon. Yeah, the metallic speed paints are crazy good. Like when they were like, hey, we're making a new line of speed paints, because they came out with their original speed paints. And some people didn't like them because they felt like there was a bunch of activation. I had a tiny bit of activation one time, but I guess I paint differently, because usually if I'm putting down speed paints, then the most I'm usually doing over the top of that later on is maybe some dry brushing. I don't usually put down, like back in the day when I was predominantly painting with contrasts instead of speed paints, I wouldn't put down a bunch of contrast, and then immediately flood it with a whole bunch of wash and stuff like that. I would maybe be a little bit more careful with the wash or whatever. I try not to just go, well, I've covered it in speed paint, let's now cover it in brown wash. It seems like you do one or the other. Whoops. Nonetheless, when they then came out with Speed Paint 2.0, and they're like, okay, there's that activation problem that some people were having, and they also made the drying time a bit longer so that the flow works a little bit better, which I also really like. Then they were also like, oh yeah, and we made metallic speed paints. I'm like, the heck is a metallic speed paint? It would be like, if you think about it, it'd be like a metallic contrast paint. Like, nobody makes those. And so Army Painter was like, yeah, we made these metallic speed paints. And I was like, that seems weird. And then they were like, well, yeah, with the gold, when you put it on there, it's kind of like when you put a normal gold paint on and then you go and put a brown wash over the top of it, except it's in like one step. I'm like, well, that's a cool concept. And then I started messing with them a little bit after a long time. Like, they had been out for quite some time and I still hadn't really messed with them. And it was sometime in September that I started messing with them a little bit. And I was like, how are they doing this? Because what's so weird about them, in my opinion, in a cool way, is that like normally with metallic paints, you're supposed to put them over black. Like if you're painting silver, you generally put them over black. I generally like to put gold over brown, which if you watch Vince's video, he doesn't make fun of me specifically, but he does basically say that it's stupid to do that, which we'll disagree on that with normal paints, but whatever. The reason I like to put brown underneath my gold is because then if you miss any spots, then the brown kind of comes through like in the little tiny recesses and stuff like that. And if it's like, say, like white and you paint in there, it doesn't, and you miss some spots in the recesses, it looks weird to have a white shadow in the middle in the dark parts, but whatever. We'll agree to disagree, he and I. But I felt like he was calling me out specifically. Nonetheless, this stuff you do generally want to put over white because it's it's a metallic, but it's kind of translucent. Like it still lets the color underneath come through a little bit as far as the light. If you watch Vince's video, he paints the stuff over white, he paints it over black, he paints it over a zenithal, which is very interesting. And then he also paints it, I think, over brown. And the thing about the colors is that they're just, because they're like a speed paint, they're very, very fluid. So you don't have to worry about it, like, you know, not getting into the crevices. It's going to get flow into the crevices because it's got a lot more flow. It's got the most flow of pretty much most, like, there are airbrush colors out there that are definitely more flowy in the metallics, and I like some of those too. But these new colors are really, really interesting in the metallic speed paints. And the thing that's also very interesting about them, and he mentioned it in his video, and it's true, is that most metallic paints use mica, which is a mineral, and it's a ground up kind of mineral to kind of give it the reflectivity to make it look like metal. But it's not metal, it's some mineral, I guess. What these are using is powdered aluminum. So it's an actual metal in there that's doing the job. So it's very interesting. I gotta be honest, I've been predominantly using those. Maybe not so much with dry brushing. I've still been using regular opaque metallic paint for dry brushing. So, you know, depending on what I want to do, like, you know, there's a bunch of different colors specifically within the Army Painter line or whatever. But for like, I need to paint this thing a color like silver or whatever, I'm generally using the speed paints now for that kind of stuff. And yeah, Vince is very fussy about his metallics, which he says in his video, and he's not wrong. And he likes these quite a bit. So it's very interesting. Spent the morning magnetizing a tank. My fingers are covered in super glue. Yeah, no, same happens to me. Don't know why I didn't know water would instantly set super glue. It's kind of a life changer. Is it water? Yeah, I guess water will do it to some degree, but also so will baking soda. I think baking soda does that too, but then of course you've got chunks of stuff. Yeah, I don't remember what I have a tendency to kind of breathe on it like I'm trying to fog up my glasses. You know, so I do that kind of, because I've got a piece that I'm trying to like, but there's also spray stuff you can get, but it's kind of icky. It was Milton Bradley, now owned by Hasbro. Oh, right. With the, wow, that's, yeah, from the Heroscape or whatever. Yep. My brother was super into that. Yeah, I mean, it was quite popular. Appreciate the tanks for the apocalypse was simple enough to use as an introduction to wargaming for my 9-year-old. Yeah, I mean, we wanted to make it, you know, because it's in the zine and it's like, you know, 28 pages and it's a very small little kind of thing. We don't want to go like heavy and make this like a really super dense kind of book. I got to be honest, after seeing people in the Discord saying, oh, I taught it to, you know, my nieces or nephews and whatever at like, you know, Thanksgiving dinner or whatever, that kind of stuff. Because we plan on having it come out in early November, basically going forward, you know, having the zine come out, I would love to make it so that every game that comes out in the zine is kind of a group play kind of game. You know, the games that come out in like May, like the normal ones, like Rain and Hell and Space Station Zero and Majestic 13, those are going to be denser, thicker books, and they're designed for solo and co-op and some verses, but not like, oh, let's play with 7 people or whatever, you know what I mean? But I think that the stuff that comes out in Snarl, those type of games I could see being interesting and being like bigger kind of fun play kind of things. I entered an event into the calendar. I don't know if it's going to be picked up or not, but you can apply to like say, hey, I want to run this event at Adepticon. So we've had events at Adepticon before, but they've been very ad hoc. Like they're not in the, you know, event listing. You can't find them on the app. Basically, we would have to tell you and say, or on Twitter and be like, hey, we're going to be in this room. We found a spot over in the corner and we'll be doing this on Saturday night or whatever. Well, this year we want to change that and actually have an actual event. And we want to have a Tanks for the Apocalypse event. So we requested 3 4-foot by 4-foot tables to give us a little bit of extra room around the edges to keep stuff, you know, because the game's played on a 3-foot by 3-foot. But if we had 3 3-foot by 3-foot tables, then you would have no place to put your dice or whatever. So we figured 3 4-foot by 4-foots. And our hope is to have basically 30 players if we could, at least room for up to 30 players, because you could fit 10 people per table in theory. It will be interesting to see what kind of space we can get and how we can pull that off, but we'll give it a try. But yeah, I entered that into the website for Adepticon Tuesday or Thursday. So I don't know how long until they, put that information out there, but hopefully pretty soon. Uncle Adam's painting inspirations is a topic. I could see that. No longer working for Milk Can full-time. Distant Snarling Badger most of the time. Yeah, I mean, I still do freelance for them. But that's been going on for a little over a year now. Yeah, I've been doing freelance for them and then spending most of my time doing this and then the game. It really saved my bacon earlier this year when I was working on Majestic 13, because the layout and all the art that I did, basically the photo manipulation and all that jazz, that took a good 2 months. Just straight up. Like I would get up in the morning, go down in the basement, work on the game layout until 5ish or whatever. Like I would, that's take a break for lunch. I was working on that pretty hard for just about 2 months. And if I had also had to go to work 9 to 5 or whatever, all that kind of stuff during that time, it wouldn't have happened, or I just wouldn't have slept, which would have all been real bad. So yeah, like right now I've got a bunch of freelance stuff that I need to get done actually. I'm in the process of, like I said, doing some stuff for Renegade through Milk Can, but otherwise that's where I'm working at right now. Wiggle it just a little bit. I mean, that can't help with getting the paint, or not the paint, sorry, the glue, the CA glue. I noticed on the boxes for the Warpaints Fanatic line that the color triads are only for the complete set, not for the other box sets. Love the channel, brother. Yeah, I mean, if you buy the complete set, then you get everything. If you buy the mega set and the most wanted set, I think a lot of them will then come together to be full triads. Like I said, I think it would be really smart of them, and I don't know if this is a thing they'll do or not, but it would be smart of them, I think, to sell them in 6-packs too, where you're just like, I want to buy the neutral grays. Boop, there you go. But I think it would be a hard ask to get the stores to stock all those little 6-bottle boxes or whatever like that. They will be also sold in singles too. So if you decide to buy a box, let's say the mega box, and then you have 3 of 6 colors in the greens, and you find you paint a lot of orcs and you want more of the greens, well, then you could go through and buy singularly the other bottles that you're missing, and then boom, have all 6 of them or whatever. So that's a possibility. But I don't know if they have any of the full-blown triad colors in the regular, non-complete box set. And again, the complete box set, what did he say the price was going to be? I don't remember from the video. I know it's very cheap in comparison to the number of bottles you get. I swear to God, I remember it being because their current normal bottles of opaque paint cost $3.75, and they're going to be upping the price to $4.25, which is still cheaper than GW by 30 cents. But I think they're going to be upping the price to that. But if you buy it in the complete box set, because you're getting 216 paints, the retail on that at $4.25 would be, I don't know, $900. But I think they're selling the complete set for less than $600 or something. I could be wrong on that. I don't remember exactly, but it was in the video because they just announced the prices and stuff like that. Not this past Friday, but I think the Friday before. So, for beginners, I think a big barrier of thinking they need their models painted to play the game, or they'll be criticized. Let's see here. Plastaweld applicators, bottle with tiny metal needle. I use it for styrene and plastic parts. My needle diameter is too large. Flow is messy. That size needle diameter works best. I've never tried a glue like that before. Greetings from Warsaw. I'm building a Night Lord siege army for 30K. That's cool. I think the 2019 Warhammer Apocalypse rule set was the best that they ever done. When Legions was announced, I couldn't see myself buying it, assuming I'd be flat broke when it came out. I'm not flat broken, can't afford it, happily love my tiny tanks and infantry. Cool. I never played the original, and I know that this is bigger than the original now, physically, size. The scale is pretty big in comparison, but still. Warlord Titans are the same cost as a Knight, so I made my choice. Gotcha. A little late to the party, but it's my birthday. Now I have a Casterkin kill team and Thorin's Hobbit warband to paint. Hello, everyone. Well, happy birthday, and that's cool that you got some cool stuff. Playing any Combat Patrol or Warcry soon? Let's see here. This upcoming weekend, I'm going to be we're going to be working on the sunroom because I'm moving my office into the sunroom. The weekend after that, I'll be at Vince's in Columbus. I don't know about what's coming on after that. Then we start heading into kind of Christmas and stuff like that. I have some still tacky spray prime into Bones minis going on 3 years now. Yeah, if you spray can prime the white Bones minis, they will be sticky and stay sticky for a good long time. Yeah, that's why you want to use a brush on. I hate those squeeze bottles with liquid styrene cement. Loathe, actually, give me a brush applicator. Sure. Historicals are great for practice models, often about 30 or 40 models per $20 in plastic and all. Yeah, I can see that for sure. That's true. Another great thing, honestly, is the Stargrave miniatures or the Frostgrave miniatures. Those plastics from North Star Military Figures. Is that the name of the company? You get generally... I was just looking at a box of the Stargrave miniatures. I think it was either Crew 2 or Mercenaries 2, which is basically the women, because they've got Crew and then Crew 2. And Crew is like all dudes, and then Crew 2 is ladies. And I think it's 20 models for $30. And they're all plastic, you know, and they're really modular and very cool, and yeah, they're great. How are the metallics on a wet palette? The speed paints, I don't ever use them on a wet palette. I only ever use them on that nowadays. I only ever use them on that that silicone fidget popper thing. So yeah, I don't ever use them on a wet palette. I did use metallics, like regular opaque, normal acrylic metallics. I did used to use those on a wet palette just because I didn't want them to dry out instantly. And I had people tell me, oh, you're not supposed to do that. I'm like, well, I did. But yeah, with these speed paint colors, I don't ever use them on. I don't use any of the speed paint colors on a wet palette. I always drip them out onto one of those silicone fidget popper things. Or there's all kinds of things you can use. You can also, like, I know that the new, much larger wet palette that Army Painter makes, there's an insert in there that's also just got a bunch of like plastic wells, so you can just put drops of stuff in there and then dip into there. I haven't really used it because it's too big for my table. Like, I have their original like wet palette that's like a great size. But then I also, like I said, I use that silicone fidget popper thing. You know, those things are awesome for speed paints, washes, all that kind of stuff. It's really changed the way I paint. Hello from a chilly but sunny Ontario. Nice. You don't need a 3D printer for it. It's about creating effects and scenery for your miniatures, like corpses, gore, essentially using bits to create stuff and not just print every little bit. Gotcha. Molly, how you doing? Got bright all of a sudden. I'm getting nuked on this side. I should have pulled the shades down. Yesterday was birthday. I had funds. Nice. How not to buy all the plastic crack and paints your goblin brain wants, needs. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. That's not a bad one. Anything except GW and its products. I may be wrong in the wrong place. I mean, I talk a lot about non-GW stuff. I mean, I talked recently about how I think the new Warcry pricing setup is like a weird stealth price hike and whatnot. But in general, I'm not a fan of their paints. Because I don't like the pots. Well, I don't like the opaques either, but I don't like the pots. So yeah. Sunny Toronto. I think I said that one. Feisty Crabman, how you doing? Took me a bit to realize that GW is superior in models only. However, I do love the lore of their games. Army Painter paints are better to me, even pre-Fanatic. Especially the airbrush paints and the speed paints for sure. Yeah. And just the fact that they were... with opaque paints in a pot, like that is the worst place that I want them, because then I have to put it on a brush or something and then put it on my wet palette. Then I have to clean it off my brush because I've got too much paint on my brush now by transferring it over the wet palette. Some people do the thing, I see Sam do this, where he'll dip the back side of the brush, the handle, into the pot and then put it on the wet palette and then wipe it off. And then, you know what I mean? that's not a bad idea. But then you're still wasting a bunch of paint by having to get it on something and wipe it off to put it over there. Whereas if it's a dropper bottle, you just go and put it directly onto the wet palette, which makes a lot more sense, which is why I'm a bigger fan of that. And then, of course, there are people who like to take their GW paints and take them out of the pots and put them in the wet palette, or put them in dropper bottles, which works, but it's also a lot of extra work. So, yeah, I honestly think that for me these days, GW is mostly the company that makes pretty good models, but they just don't really make a very good rule sets, in my opinion. Again, this is me talking. This is my opinion. Your mileage may vary. The lore is, for me, it's not a big draw, frankly, but I know that it is for a lot of people. I need advice. I'm moving house and will have, for the first time, a dedicated hobby room. Well, that would be very nice. Any recommendations? Airbrush station, 3D printer, purpose in built light desk rig. Help wanted. There's a light that I'm pretty excited about. The company Game Envy, they were originally known for making paint handles, like the little handle that you have your thing on, and then it's holding onto your miniature. And then they started getting into wet palettes and doing a lot of wet palettes and things like that. They now have a light, which I think is called Lucent, Lucent, I think. It's really cool. I saw it at Nova. And I swear to God, he told me they were selling it. It was going to be sold for $85, which, I mean, like, the arm of it was metal. I'm pointing at the arm of my mic. It's holding my microphone, which you can't see. So, wasting, but still. So for lighting, that's something to maybe think about over at Game Envy. They've got this new light that they just dropped, or they're just doing pre-orders for now or something like that. But it's like super adjustable. Like, it's got like a bar, like, it kind of, like, when it's all folded up, it sort of looks like a crossbow a little bit. But I think that's not on purpose. That's just me. But yeah, it's very adjustable, and it's LED lighting, and it's not just like, here's a light bar. It's like, here's a middle light bar, and then on the sides, there's two things that you can kind of bend down, so you're sort of wrapping light a little bit around what you're painting and things like that, and you can adjust it, and it's a whole thing. And so yeah, it's very interesting. Otherwise, yeah, no, that's a good question. I would say the difference between whether you want to go airbrush or whether you want to go 3D printer, one of the big things to think about is what kind of ventilation you have. Airbrush ventilation is not that important. You want to wear a mask while you're airbrushing of some sort, and it is a good idea to have a hood that sucks the particulate into the filter, but it doesn't need to go outside. As long as you're using normal opaque paints, there's no fumes per se. What you're concerned about are particulates in the air and them getting into your lungs. So that's why you wear a mask. And if you have a hood, it will then also help, because like what I used to do before I had a hood was I would wear a mask, but then my room that I would airbrush in would just over time get dusty with paint dust floating around. And you had to wipe everything down, and then it was fine. Then I bought one of those hoods, and now I don't have to wipe stuff down anymore, because all the particulate basically gets sucked into the, like, it's kind of like a furnace filter, but it gets sucked into that filter, and then it doesn't, But I have the external exhaust. There's no hose that goes to a window. I just have it blowing against a wall, and it's just a white painted, like, wooden wall. And my thought was, eventually I'm going to see a circle, because, like, literally the difference, the space between the wall and the back of the hood is maybe 2 inches. So I'm like, eventually I'm going to see a kind of a dark kind of gray circle where the paint that's not getting caught is going to go out and stick to the wall. It's been 2 years and I don't have a circle yet. I'm not even a shadow. So it's the filter's doing its job, is my point, which is great. But if you do want a 3D printer resin specifically, then you definitely want something that blows air outside if you can. It's just a really smart idea, especially if that's also the area where you're going to sit and paint. Yeah. So I think that's the big deal. Also figuring out, like, what would you use more? You know what I mean? Are you like really super into doing 3D printed models, or are you more interested in getting into airbrushing? That's kind of a choice too. But the ventilation, I think, is a big deal. Algorithm shifted to favoring smaller channels a few years ago. I don't know if that's... I don't know if I've seen that. I think that it definitely... Like, if you do a search for a thing, boy, do you then see a lot of that same thing. And very frequently, like... How am I trying to say this? When you do a search for a thing, or if you watch something, like something gets thrown in front of you and it's about like, oh, how to paint shields, and you go, oh, that's interesting, I'd like to know about that. You're going to see a lot of videos about painting shields, and some of those may come from smaller channels. But if you haven't given the algorithm a ton of like direction recently, like weird direction, if you just keep watching videos from people you watch all the time and stuff like that, and you don't really deviate too much, it will just show you a lot of bigger stuff. Like every once in a while, if I haven't like given my algorithm a bit of a poke by like asking for a specific thing or watching something that I don't usually watch, eventually it'll start showing me like pimple popping videos, because they're just very popular for some ungodly reason I don't understand. Yeah, and so so then I'm like, okay, I better search for some stuff. So that stuff leaves because that stuff grosses me out. My mom is into that. My mom is definitely loves to watch the pimple popping videos. And I'm like, ugh, not for me. Anyway, do not make videos on tobacco pipe and ride motorcycles. Not a big fan base. So you're saying like at the same time, where you smoke a pipe and ride a motorcycle at the same time? Or is it, because that does seem like a very specific niche. I give you that. Watching Guerrilla Miniatures series of videos on Legions Imperialis convinced me that this game is exactly what I want if a tad expensive. Unlikely to reach 3,000 points, though. Yeah, well, I saw some article or something about how, like, if you want to get the game to 3,000 points, it'll cost you, like, nearly $1,000 or something crazy like that. And I don't know if that's true, because I think they didn't have all the prices yet, but it sounds like it's true. So yeah, like that starter set, $200 for all the stuff you get. I'm like, oh, that's a pretty good deal. But then that's not anywhere near 3,000 points. To be fair, I don't know that I want to play a 3,000 point army. I watched a battle report recently, and I watched a couple of Guerrilla Miniature Games videos, but there was some other group that I've never seen before, and I watched one of their videos, and they had some of the flyers in there, and they had a couple other little things, and I was like, oh, that's cool. But they didn't have like 3,000 points, I don't think, and I don't know that I want to go that big. But again, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a thing I have to worry about, because it doesn't look like I'll be able to buy the starter box, so oh well. But the rule set looks interesting, like I said. Best airbrush I've ever used, PS 270. I've never heard of that. Topic idea, games I've played in 2023. Well, it wouldn't be a ton. I've mostly played Warcry, Combat Patrol, Space Station Zero, Majestic 13, Tanks for the Apocalypse. Did I say Space Weirdos? Space Weirdos. Kill Sample Process a little bit. Solo stuff. 40K, I guess. Combat Patrol. Did I say Combat Patrol? Yeah. That'd be interesting. Going to a friend's house to paint today. Have my travel kit ready. Nice. Not a fan of Shatterpoint either. Yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't... Looking at the Harder and Steenbeck Ultra 2024 airbrush. Wow, I haven't heard of that. I mean, I know about Harder to Steenbeck, but I haven't heard of the Ultra 2024 brush. Hope you had a lovely holiday weekend. It's been pretty good. Looking now to do some snow bases for Warcry guys, and wondered if you had any recommendations, products to avoid. Probably some of the best snow texture. Monument Hobbies makes a really good snow texture. It's very ultra fine. I don't know if it just straight out of the jar, it looks directly like snow, like once it dries. You may have to do something else to it. They may have something on their YouTube channel about how to make it look even a little bit more like snow, but I think it's a good place to start. I think they call it ultra fine, but it's bright white. So it kind of looks like when you're messing around with it in the jar, it kind of looks like mushroom fluff, but slightly gritty. But yeah. Agree on AMG, yeah. I should be more excited for Star Wars than I am. The movies, the cartoons, the comics, the novels all excite me, but I can't get into the new stuff. Do the kids need to get off my lawn? I mean, it's a possibility. That happens to me as well. They did end up putting out a skirmish rule set for Legion that they're supporting. Not the same, I know. See, but they call it a skirmish version, but it's not. They're like, oh, and there's a skirmish version of Legion. You're like, yeah, but it's still a 500-point list, and you still have to move around in unit coherency and stuff like that. You know, like, I was hoping they were going to make Kill Team for Legion, where you would like literally walk around with like 6 or 7 guys, and that they didn't have to stand next to each other all the time. But instead, they were like, oh, it's the skirmish version. I was like, I'm on board. And then I read the rules, and I'm like, this is just 300 points less than the regular game, and little tiny, yeah, it wasn't, unless they came out with something else that I didn't hear about. But the skirmish game that they came out with, when I read it, I'm like, this is not skirmish, this is just smaller army. One page of rules someone just mentioned here. Also, Grimdark Future Firefight. That's another thing I played this year. Just want to let you know that since you showcased one page rules, I've taken the plunge. Going to be printing stuff this week. Curious if you've got tips, tricks, recommendations. Nice. Are you gonna what are you getting into? Are you getting into Grimdark Future, which is the army scale game? Are you getting into Grimdark Future Firefight, which is the skirmish scale game? Or are you getting into the fantasy ones, which are Age of Fantasy and Age of Fantasy Skirmish? Recommendations would be, I would personally, unless you were just like, I hate skirmish games, I would start there. And then maybe decide to move from there. Also, if you get the actual regular rule sets, like either through the Patreon or whether you buy the rule set for $5 on like Wargame Vault or whatever, start with just the base rules, and then as you and your friends like start to play, then you can start to tack on the optional kind of rules, which is a very cool way to do it in my mind, because you can play the game and get the hang of it first, and then start to go, okay, well, we're not going to add combat or command points because that's an optional rule, but we are going to add this and so you can kind of sort of almost custom build the way you want to play it with your friends. And if you play against somebody else who doesn't play it that way, then you can kind of adjust or just go all the way back to like normal base kind of, you know, initial rules and stuff like that. Started before Shatterpoint. Imperial Assault figures are smaller than Legion. Oh yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, they went from Imperial Assault models, and then they went to Legion models, which are slightly taller, and now they're going to the even taller Shatterpoint ones. Eventually we'll be using full-size action figures. I mean, eventually we'll just be using full-size people. It'll be 6 foot tall, whatever. Honestly, Luke Skywalker is not that tall. I mean, they did mention he was a little short for a stormtrooper, but I almost knocked down Mark Hamill in the 90s at Gen Con. He was at Gen Con he was in some of the Wing Commander games, like Wing Commander 2, Wing Commander 3, and stuff like that. And so he was in the Wing Commander booth. There used to be a lot more video games at Gen Con for a while when it was still in Milwaukee. So there was a Wing Commander booth. He was in the Wing Commander booth, and he had to go, I don't know, get a sandwich or go to the bathroom or whatever. So he was leaving the booth, and he was walking one way, and I was walking the opposite way, like, and we were at a crossroads, and I was looking at stuff over here, and he was looking at stuff over there, and I bumped into him, and I'm like 6'2", and he's considerably, and I almost knocked him down, and I was like, oh, sorry, and then I was like, oh shit, it's Luke Skywalker. But yeah, that was he was very nice about it. But that was in like, it had to have been in the 90s. My first Gen Con was in 92, and it moved to Indianapolis in 2003, I think. Yeah, so it was sometime in the probably late 90s. Totally bought a fidget popper thanks to you. The fidget poppers are awesome. Those are great. Shatterpoint development was almost done when Legion was dumped on AMG. No kidding. Noticing an influx of new people to WHF. What is W and Tau? I don't know what WHF and TOW are. The Old World? Oh, the Old World. Is that what it is? Okay, I think that's what it is. Renewing some of your oldest, most popular videos with new concepts or opinions. Yeah, I've been thinking about doing some of that. I did that just recently. I did the Become a Game Advocate, and then I made a new video based off of that recently, and that got no views. That was didn't work out. That's fine. Only time I'd want square base is if I got a huge historical pike regiment, not regiment. Super glue tips and tricks. Where not to save money. I cheaped out when I first started and it affected my early progress a lot. Interesting. The stock for pre-order on GW site and the stock available for LGOs are completely separate. Right, like I said, there's a very decent possibility that you might be able to get it at your local shop. I don't know if my local shop... The other thing, too, is that they've changed just recently the way that local shops order. So, like, there's a difference between going to a Warhammer store, which I don't have a Warhammer store. The closest one is like 50 miles away, which is a bit of a drive, almost an hour. But, like, the local stores that I have here in town, if you're an independent stockist, but you have a contract through Games Workshop to get stuff directly from Games Workshop, they have recently changed the way that you order. It used to be that they did it over the phone. 2023, we're still doing it over the phone. Now, it's not web-based. It is now instead, from what I've been told, there's a Google document that you have to fill out or something crazy like that, or a Google form, and you have to like do it on a Thursday so that it'll be put in by Saturday, and they'll tell you how many. I've talked to several store owners recently who are real not happy with the way that Games Workshop has changed their ordering for stores. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. Like, all the other distributors, Alliance, AMD, or ACD, like all those different, they all have a website. You go to the website, you say, I want 1 of these, 2 of these, 5 of these, 6 of these, boop, done. GW just recently went from calling and talking to your rep on the phone and telling them you want to, here, use this Google Doc. It's astounding. Anyway. Miami Vice Nurgle sounds amazing. I mean, it does sound like an interesting concept there. Finally got the first wave of Vallejo Express color to test, but to get them affordably from the States in full wave, I had to order from Micromark. Oh, no kidding. Huh. Still searching for jeweler's wax pencils for handling tiny parts. I don't think I'm familiar with those. How to not overbuy, asking for a friend. Oh, I get you. Yep. Let's see here. Warhammer stores do provide a free mini to those getting into the hobby. Yes. If you've got one near you, yes. Like I said, here in Wisconsin, for the longest time, we had 3 stores. There was like one in Madison, outside of Madison, one outside of Milwaukee, and I think there was one in Kenosha, which is right on the border with Illinois. And then we got one in West Bend, which I don't think I've ever been to. And then the closest one to me, like I said, is still now 50 miles north of me, roughly. 45 maybe. In De Pere? I think it's in De Pere, which is up near Green Bay. But yeah, I think in the UK, Warhammer stores are everywhere to some degree, but in the States, at least around where I am, they're not. I've only been in them a handful of times because they're never close. I bought an expansive fancy model 2 years ago. It's assembled and I still fear painting it. That's the thing too. Yeah. I mean, like I bought a GW Artificer brush years ago, like fancy natural hair. Like, it was one of their brushes at the time. And this is, again, like I said, years ago, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, this thing was $26. Fancy brush, right? I'm like, ooh, geez, well, this'll do. I've still never used it because I'm like, I'm going to break it. I'm going to screw it up and somehow. And I don't, so that's, yeah. Let's see here. How to organize your hobby space to paint productively. Well, I would like to watch that video as well. Oh, everything moved. Dang it. Where am I? Michael Strange, how you doing? Six-pack idea would be great. I agree. Yeah, I'm not going fast enough today. I tell you what. Expensive model 2 years ago. There we go. My second hobby is collecting. Gotcha. I don't want to paint something that's boring, though. It doesn't motivate me. Well, I mean, okay, then I guess buy an expensive model and then go from there. But I'll tell you that, especially when you first start, you're going to suck. You're going to be not very good at it. And so I would definitely try to, it's like it's like practicing, like literally, like you don't want to start out by like, okay, well, I really want to get into running, so I'm going to run a marathon first. You have to kind of work up to it. You're like, well, but only running a mile isn't interesting to me. I mean, that's okay, but it's generally a better idea to kind of start small and grow slowly. So to start with something and just paint some stuff up, and then and it doesn't have to be hundreds of them. It has to be a couple, 3 of them, 4 of them, and then if you want to go, but if you want to, I'm not your dad, so do whatever you want. If you want to go out and buy a $200 one of those new 30K whatever, the big robots, they're like an Imperial Knight, but they're for Horus Heresy instead of like regular 40K. Those things are $200. So if you want to go out there and have that be your first model, you can do that. But I can tell you, in a year, you're going to look back at that and go, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish that I had instead waited until I got a little bit better painting, and then I did that. You know what I mean? So that's, I think, the benefit. +1 for a hobby on how folks organize their hobby spaces. Yeah, that would be, yeah. My first hobby is collecting. My second is trying to get through my pile of shame. Yeah, I mean, I have feelings about whether collecting is a hobby specifically. And I mean, technically, yes, but I guess I don't know. Like, when we're talking about collecting, you're just like, well, I bought all these boxes. That's it. That's the end. That's my hobbies. I bought all these boxes. I get, like I see people who collect those Funko Pops, like, have tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of Funko Pops. In my mind, you're either doing that because you are looking at it as an investment, which is, something. It seems unlikely, but it might take off. Beanie Babies didn't really particularly, but whatever. Like for me, if I was going to buy a Funko Pop, the first thing I would do is take it out of the box, which from what I understand, a lot of Funko Pop collectors would be like, don't take that out of the box. Obviously, that ruins it or whatever. But I'm like, well, then I want to put it up and be like, hey, look, that's Iron Man or whatever on my desk. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not telling you don't collect things. I'm just saying that I don't know if it's a hobby per se, at least in my mind, my personal opinion. Because if it is, I'm a heck of a hobbyist. I've got a lot of things in the basement for sure. But generally, I'm buying those things because I'm like, okay, I know that this model is something I want to paint eventually, or I know that I'm going to use parts from this for when I do kit bashing or stuff like that, or I have a specific project in mind for this or whatever, but I don't just usually buy models in theory. I never go up and buy a box of models just because I want to have it and then just set it on a shelf. You know what I mean? That's personally for me, but you might have been talking about something else as far as collecting, to be honest, as well. How to finish one project before jumping right into the next one and dumping the first. I do have a tendency to have multiple projects running one at a time. And I've talked about that in the past in the videos about like, okay, well, I think for me, it's important to have multiple things running so that when I run out of steam on this one, I can hop over to this one and I don't run out of steam completely. If I was working on just a single product or project, sorry, if I was working on just a single project and then lost motivation, then I just stop. And then that, for me, I find that to regain motivation is to then instead go, okay, cool. Okay, let's work on this other thing. And then when I get this thing done, then maybe I'll go back and finish this thing real quick or whatever. Very basics of how to use a brush. I had not done any art class in 20 years before starting painting minis. Yeah, I mean, that would be an interesting one, I think. How to Eat an Elephant, You and Your Pile of Opportunity. Yeah, I can see that. It's a good title, too, by the way. Nolzur's has too many tiny details. I don't know. I mean, the thing is also is that you don't have to paint them to look like those types of models specifically, those WizKids ones, Nolzur's, D&D, all those different ones, from them where they're pre-primed kind of in a gray and they come in like usually sometimes it's a 1-pack or 2-pack, depending on how small the model is. Sometimes it's just like, I'm going to paint this guy's cloak green just to get the hang of painting. you know, when you're very first starting. And then you're going to kind of go from there and then go, okay, well, now I'm going to try to shade or whatever. And you might not even finish the model. You might just get like, okay, I'm going to work on the cloak and the pants. Or then you maybe start working on a bunch of skin tones on like some shirtless barbarian dudes or whatever. That's fine. But you don't have to finish the models. You don't have to go through and go, oh, there's so many little pouches and little vials and little bottles and stuff like that. And these, you know, you don't have to paint all those, especially when you're practicing. That's kind of the whole idea. Wadtamaton, how you doing? Good intro video would be for the idea behind base coat versus primer to different colors of primer. I'm still torn if I use any airbrush paint to prime. Gotcha. I can see that. Primer on newest ways to get primer is a different type of primer, right? On the newest ways to get models from primed to table quickly and not terribly. 3 colors up, slap chop, dry brushing, etc. Sure. How to get a table's worth of terrain up to tabletop ready for cheap? Yeah. Gonna sit here and eat my sandwich and watch Adam read chat. There you go. Entertainment for some instead of watching regular TV, not necessarily looking to learn anything. No, and I don't have a problem with it, but I think it's interesting. Like, it's not the way that I watch, so that's why I'm always kind of like, huh, this is a very popular video, and it's just basically, that's interesting. But yeah, no, for sure. Because I've watched some of those like diorama ones where like nobody talks for the entire video, and it's just like, well, now we're gonna do, then this happens and this happens. You just watch these hands like build this thing, and to me, I'm like, huh. But yeah, it's a different thing. Put pile of shame into other boxes sorted by category and labeled. Well, that's something. Showcase your collection. I would love to see it. Yeah, that would be a lot, wouldn't it? I did a video at the end of 2022, I think, maybe, where I showed like all the stuff that I painted that year. I didn't do that. I'm not doing that. Or was it 2021? I don't remember, but it was, I would, that's a good question. I would have to plan ahead. I should try to do that for the end of 2024 and plan ahead and then keep track better of what I painted. That would be also important. Your wife in the background going, yeah, cracked me up. Sorry. Yeah, she is a comedian. Listening while doing the most dreaded part of the hobby, cleaning and organizing the painting desk. Yeah, I need to do that again myself. Flow improver raises the viscosity of the paint in question. Sure. Drying retarder is just increasing open time. Generally, flow improver is affecting the surface tension. Interesting. Dark primer versus light primer. My wife is new to hobby, and she was asking the other day if dark or light primers are better to make it look a certain way. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a thing. I generally work with dark primers myself and then build up from there. But some people, like, again, I don't paint a lot of like elfin princesses. If I was trying to paint something that's supposed to be very bright, then it's better to start with a lighter color primer, generally white in many situations. But yeah. Drying retarder keeps it from drying. It stays wet. Flow improver breaks surface tension so that the paint will spread thinner and more easily. Gotcha. Has anyone other than Monument Hobbies done a video review of their new medium? The Noosh stuff? Is that because I just saw their video of Noosh, but I don't know. I don't even know if it's available to get yet. Is it available on their website? I haven't looked. I'm about to get back to playing in a group this Wednesday, and I am terrified. Well, I hope I hope it goes well. I mean, I don't know if you should be terrified, but you know. Should do a CMYK pack. Setting up a league campaign for your favorite miniature game. A video on why you shouldn't try to paint true white very often could be handy. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. It's a good point. Like I use, like white's a good dry brush when you're trying to use like something like a slap chop type of thing or whatever, Let's see here. Top 10 tools for us beginners. Sure, makes sense. Currently using white to tile work on my bases. I mean, yeah, I could see that. If you want a good white, Monument Hobbies, sure. If the paint scheme is intended to be bright, use white undercoat. If it is dark or metallic scheme, undercoat black. Yep. 10 most expensive hobby tools I've bought, and do I still use them? That's a good one. I'm trying to think what those would be. I mean, airbrush would be one. I use that constantly. I do own a Proxon, like a wire foam cutter thing. I use that. I'm using it more now specifically. It kind of sat for a number of like about a year. And then all of a sudden I started using it a bunch. So that's been cool. But I've been, building a little bit more terrain and stuff. So that's, it's really what you use it for. The 3D printer still hasn't 3D printed. I have a habit of picking up tiny bits and parts from any surface or any source at all for use on models. Maybe a short piece about having a tiny eye for seeing and scale. Yeah. Let's see here. I've gone black primer straight to white with the heavy white, and it's a lifesaver. Gotcha. Any thoughts on magnetizing minis? I haven't done it in a long time. I used to, when I was playing 40K a bunch, 5th, 6th, 7th edition, it was kind of a necessity because you would be like, you'd build your list, and then you'd be like, I am 5 points over. I'm like, all right, I guess I will change this sergeant from a plasma pistol to a bolt pistol, and then that will give me my 5 points or whatever. So there was a lot of that. Also, power weapons. Your sergeant in your unit, your power weapons would be different. Like you would, it wasn't just power weapons. It used to be when 5th edition, it was just like, you have a power weapon. It's whatever it is. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, there's a power axe, a power maul, a power sword, a power, I don't know, what's that thing you use to julienne fries? Mandolin. Yeah. Anyway, so, and then it was important to be able to switch between things, or else you had to have a bunch of different models. Nowadays, specifically with 40K, specifically, all the weapons cost the same cost, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. You don't have to go, oh, geez, if I take this plasma pistol, it's going to be, no, I mean, it's built in. So I don't do it myself at all anymore, really. But then there's also magnetizing the bases if you want to carry them in some sort of thing that, it's not like foam, but you want to magnetize the bases for that. There's that I've never done. I believe, very honest with you, I should probably look into it. Vortex mixer, yeah, those are pretty nice. I've got one in my airbrush room. For a handful of colors, I never do fancy. Black, white, cherry red, and yellow. I just get apple barrel. Huh, no kidding. Debonder is mainly acetone. It smells like it. It smells like fingernail polish remover. Yeah. Does Vallejo use ketchup water too? I used to feel the same about Army Painter. I don't think that anybody else used to do that. And like I said, the new Army Painter stuff, the Fanatic stuff, does not have that anymore. It's a completely different formulation, and there's a lot more pigment as well. But yeah, this is the starter. The starter thing, which is, I don't think available in stores yet, but it will be soon. I think they're kind of launching with this. I don't remember. It's in the video. I don't remember what's launching first, but I think that's one of them. Do Army Painter do any airbrush primers? They have, I believe, a white, a gray, and a black. I think. Stores have been able to order for a week or so. Some stores technically had it before Monument had it because of delivery time. Oh, that's cool. Interesting. Adding Winsor Newton mixing mix lightens without going chalky. I've never even heard of that stuff. Interesting. Mixing white. Oh, that makes more sense. Yeah. I see 10 different shades of gray on my desk here, not counting the metallics. Gotcha. I'm going to buy the mega set. I need that holster to hold my paints. Oh, yeah, that's interesting, too. Is, yeah, the mega sets, I don't know if it's a holster. Because that holster goes in your belt, right? Anyway, yeah, the mega set I saw comes with like a little MDF kind of thing you put together to keep your paints in and stuff, which is cool. The complete set does not, but it's also all of the paints, and you would need a really big thing made out of MDF, and it's already kind of expensive. But so yeah, but the mega set will come with that, which is interesting, and I don't think the Most Wanted set does. I think that's different. Let's see here. Why do you think they made new metallics after making such perfect metallics in the speed paint range? I think some people just prefer a regular metallic, but they want to have both options, What I don't know yet is if the new metallics are also using like the new non-speed paint metallics. I don't know if the new Fanatic metallics are using aluminum powder or if they're using mica. Yeah, if I had to guess, I would say they're probably using aluminum powder, but I could be wrong. But I don't know the answer to that yet. I don't know if they've said. Maybe they have. But I had a conversation with a guy from Army Painter, and I think Vince had the same conversation because that's why he mentioned it in his video. But yeah, I know for sure that the speed paints are using aluminum powder as the metallic instead of mica. And that's part of why they're kind of interesting that way. But I don't know about the regular upcoming Fanatics if that's the case. I think I could maybe email somebody and find out maybe. Legion's box is still available for New Zealand and Australian customers, but only went on pre-order this weekend. Price is $400. Ooh, yikes. Heard Army Painter metallic speed paints are garbage. I have not found that to be the case. I found that to be them to be really, really good. And Vince just made a video yesterday, and Vince is very fussy about his metallics, and he's pretty impressed with them as well. So yeah. Have Army Painter said if they're going to sell the 6 paint triads as sets? They haven't, that I know of. Like I said, I think it would be kind of cool if they did, but I don't know. Like, then they would have to sell them in these kind of small boxes that would be about yay. And the issue is that when you come out with constant, like, the store owners are going to be like, where am I going to put all that? You know what I mean? Like, they, especially because, like, Army Painter, like a lot of paint companies, sell their paints in racks. So they'll just sell you the rack full of paint. Boom, there you go. Now you have a place to put it. You don't have to put it, but you know. But if they were then like, oh, we're also going to sell it in 6 things, like they could sell it to their website, but I don't know if the stores would be able to carry it very easily. I don't know. I'm not sure how they would do that. And I don't know if they're going to go down that road or not. They haven't said 6 packs yet, but I think it'd be cool. Let's see here. Vladimir, how you doing? Do the Fanatic paints have an agitator in the bottle? Yes. Yes. How'd you hurt your back? I woke up. It's a bummer getting old. Yeah, it was a Sunday. It was the last time that I did every other Sunday show. I woke up, my back was kind of stiff, and I was like, ugh. And then over the course of the day, it just kept getting worse. And then on Monday, I woke up, and I was like, I got to call a chiropractor. Because I had a chiropractor a decade ago, the last time that this happened. And I went to him for like a couple of months and then didn't go to him anymore. But that guy's not, he's moved away or something. I don't know. He's not there anymore. So I started looking for another one, and I found another guy, and I went on Monday, not this last Monday, but the Monday before. And then I've gone, I don't know, at this point I've gone maybe 4 or 5 times, and I've got an appointment again for tomorrow. Things are getting better, but it's still not ideal. New paints are due out in the new year, and it's 216. Yeah. The full big huge giant set's 216, which includes technical paints, washes, and metallics. And 162, I think, like regular acrylic opaque paints. Speed Paint 2.0 strips white ink zenithal, only using 1.0 until my army is done. So does Contrast. That's why you don't use white ink for zenithal unless you mix matte varnish with it. That was a trick that Caleb, was it on the Games Workshop YouTube channel? I forget where it came from, but yes, if you were going to use a white zenithal and use Contrast, Caleb Wissenbeck, a high-end painter and whatnot, had a video. He was working with the Games Workshop people, and I swear he was doing airbrush videos on their channel, or maybe it was someplace else. I don't know. But basically he was like, if you're going to use white ink as the white in your zenithal, you need to add matte varnish to it, because otherwise the contrast paint will eat it, which seems to be the case also with speed paint as well to some degree. So yeah, that's just a thing. If you're going to be using, which is why I stopped using white ink. Honestly, I just started using, for my white zenithal, I just started using white airbrush paint from Army Painter. Their matte white Army Painter airbrush paint. I just started using that as my white layer over black or brown, depending on how you're doing your stuff. And it's worked great. You know, I was using white primer for a while in there, but it was sometimes a little bit more speckly than I would have liked. So yeah, I just started using the white airbrush paint as that instead. White ink is fine. And again, but like I said, you need to mix matte varnish with it. And then that way nothing will eat it when you start putting speed paints, express colors, contrast paints, whatever over the top of it. It's the way to fix that problem. That extra medium is, see, the words extra medium, it makes me think of extra large. You know, like you've got large and then extra large, but I don't know what extra medium is. Is it between medium and large? Probably. That extra medium is the Army Painter War Paints. Explains why I had so much trouble when I first tried Army Painter paints. A lot of people did. That was part of the issue. Yeah, for sure. Which type of model to start with? I got a start collecting box for Craft World, but I'm not sure which model to start putting together. They all seem like they have their own set of challenges. Sure, I can see that. How many times can you say creamy in a single video? Probably a bunch. Let's see. Mars printer and curing wash station arrived. Now to delve into which resin to use. Ooh, nice. Super glue was designed to replace stitches in war wounds. Yeah, it was. Secret to the spray stuff is to unscrew the lid, use the stem like a dropper wand. Yeah, I have done that as well with the, you're talking about for the CA glue activator? Yeah, I have done that myself. I learned that by watching Tom from Warhammer Wednesday. So the live show that Vince does, very frequently Tom is the other guest. And we were at a convention tournament. I was just going there to hang out. I wasn't there to play. But Tom and Vince were on a team. It was a team tournament. It was Holy Havoc, probably 2021, maybe. And Tom was moving a bunch of his high elves from square bases to round bases, and he had already painted up all the bases, and then he was basically breaking them off of the square bases and then gluing them. And then he had somebody else. It might have been Jack. It might have been Jack Ballard from Rerolling Ones. And so like he would like put the two pieces together, and then Jack would like dip into the bottle and go bloop and just put a drop of it on there, and then it would boom, like lock down that glue. Yeah. Does Warpaint Fanatic paints create bubbles in the paint when you paint a model? Bubbles? I don't think I've seen that. I found the new Vallejo game color paint creates bubbles when you move the paint around on a model. That seems like it's too thin then, if that's the case. I don't know if I guess if you scrub real hard, it could cause bubbles, but otherwise I've never had a bubble issue before. That's weird. I left a comment on one of your videos about how you should make a video about how to release a skirmish game. Have you considered it? I don't know if it would be a thing. There's not a lot of people out there that are making games, so I don't know that it would reach a large enough audience or be beneficial enough. Vince and I have kicked around maybe making some content for people who are interested in that specifically, but I don't know how we would get it out to people specifically. I don't know if we put it on one of our channels, if we start some other channel. I'm not sure yet. We've thought about it though. Yeah, we've done some seminars and stuff like that. We've given talks at Nova Open in DC the last 2 years about like not only about content creation and stuff like that, but also getting into game design and things. We keep meaning to try to do it at Adepticon as well, but we never think to sign up for the seminar track fast enough. Like he's signed up for classes, and I didn't sign up to run any classes this year, but he did. He's got some. But yeah, so I don't know. It's one of those things where it's a really small audience that would be interested. So it's always one of those things to figure out how to get it out to those folks. Well, anyway, I appreciate it, folks. Hopefully, if you've got some other topic ideas for new painters, again, keep putting them in the chat there. If you put the word topic in there, specifically if it's in all caps, that would be awesome. It doesn't have to be, though, but it'd be cool if you did. It'd be easier for me to find it when I go back later and pull stuff into like a Word document or whatever. Not Word, Google document, whatever, a text document. So that's pretty much it for me today. I thank you for coming by and hanging out. It's been a good talk. And yeah, we will let's see, the next video will still be here in this spot, but it's coming soon. Like I said, the plan is before the end, well, right around the end of the year is I'm gonna be over there in the sunroom. Some guy just drove by in the snow on a motorcycle, like really loud one. That was weird. But yeah, so then it'll be a different place, but that'll be more into 2024. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for coming by and hanging out. If you get the chance, hit the like button down there. I always appreciate that. It helps get the thing put out there. It does help the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. And so if you can do that, that's cool. Otherwise, we'll see you at least, I don't know, if you're on Twitch, or if you're a Twitch person, I'll be streaming on Twitch like I always do on Monday nights and on Friday mornings, so you can stop by for that. It's over here, twitch.tv/tabletop minions, 7 p.m. Fridays, or sorry, 7 p.m. Mondays and 10 a.m. Fridays, Central Time. So definitely feel free to come by for that. Otherwise, I'll be back here in 2 weeks. So we'll hopefully see you folks then. So stay safe and have a good time. And I hope you had a good holiday if you are into that whole thing recently. Or if you're American, we had Thanksgiving this weekend. Don't forget Black Friday if you're into that too. We do have, like I said, our games are still on sale for 10% off through Cyber Monday. So check those out as well at snarlingbadger.com. You can check it out in the description and all that stuff. And have a good rest of your day. Thanks for watching.